Hello and welcome to the Autistic Thinking Anonymous Guide podcast. And this podcast is basically what it says on the tin. I am a man in the UK. Hello and welcome to the Autistic Thinking Anonymous Guide podcast. And this podcast is basically what it says on the tin. I am a man with autism living in Britain. I'm in my 40s, and apart from that, I'm anonymous. I'm not going to reveal my name or say anything about who I am because I want to talk about the things that are on my mind that I really want to share with the world, but I want to share anonymously because some of what I'm going to say in this episode and in future episodes is going to be controversial. Some of it might even be explicit. It's going to be very raw and very honest. And it's that catch-22 situation that I think many of us have, that we've got a lot of things that are on our mind, a lot of things rattling through our brain, lots of thoughts, lots of feelings, but we've got nowhere really to share them, no outlet to raise your voice or discuss them, and no one who really wants to listen. At least I think there's a lot of people like that. So I just thought, I've had a lot of things on my mind lately, and I just thought, well, why don't I do this podcast? And I'm thinking at the moment it might be a once a week thing, but we'll see. I've started many things that I intend to do once a week or every so often. I never keep it up because things change or my mind is just not in the right place for it. But so that's at the moment what I'm thinking. It might probably be as and when I feel like it, but we'll see. You'll probably be very aware that there's no presentation, there's no music, bumper music, there's no logos, there's no memes, there's no clickbait, because quite frankly, I don't have much aptitude for all those things. I mean, if someone else wants to join me on this podcast and do as a joint venture and they want to help with that presentation side of things, then that'd be fantastic. But right now, I've got some things I want to talk about. I'm here on my own. I don't really want to go through all the hoops and hassle of doing all that presentation kind of stuff. I just really want to say what I want to say. And what matters is the content. What matters is the thoughts and ideas I'm talking about, not how they're presented. There's been none of this kind of like 5 steps or 10 steps to do this or lists of hacks. I'm not interested in all that kind of presentation, all that corporate style presentation. I'm interested in the substance of what I'm going to talk about. So hopefully you'll be with me, but hopefully we'll improve this over time. We'll see. But anyway, it's just, I just want to talk about some stuff that's been on my mind. And this last week or so, in fact, the last few months, but particularly the last week or so, I've been thinking about the issue of dating and the dating marketplace and dating dynamics. I am a single guy, and so I understand what the dating marketplace is like. I'm looking for a girlfriend. I've never married, no kids. My dating life more or less is I'm on the apps, I'm out there socializing, meeting people. I've got many good friends, which is fantastic. Every so often a woman shows a little bit of interest in me and I manage to get chatting and I manage to arrange to meet up for coffee or something like that, but it doesn't really go much further. That's the general pattern I find myself in when it comes to dating. And I've been speed dating a number of times and often felt quite disheartened. There's maybe 10, 12, 15 women and I don't get a single match. And I am reasonably attractive, nothing special and not jacked or anything like that, but I'm reasonably attractive. I dress quite well. I can hold a good conversation. My life is in good order, very stable. And you just thought out of 12 women, say, you thought maybe 3 or 4 would be interested in having a date with me. But it seems like, well, this is weird that you thought after a 3-minute conversation that if I can hold a decent conversation, find 1 or 2 things in common, a few would say, yeah, but, I'm interested enough to go on a date. But very often there's just no interest at all. And I find that very bemusing, very frustrating. So the truth of the matter is that every so often I will visit an escort for something more intimate. It's not a lifestyle choice. It's simply because there's just so far there's just no other option. There's no other means available to obtain physical intimacy with a woman. But I digress. But I've been thinking a lot about dating dynamics, and I've been following a lot of material that might be called red pill material to do with dating and men's stuff in what's called the manosphere. In particular, this week and last few weeks, and to some extent the last few months, I followed a guy called Troy Francis, who's a dating coach, a bit of a kind of James Bond type persona. He's based in the UK, and I mean he's just someone who resonates with me just by the way he talks. I think it's a little bit like me, and so I find him easy to listen to, and so I'm sort of drawn to his work. But when I listen to what he says, it all feels very bleak. And obviously, he's not the only one. There's others out there. There's others who are even bleaker than he is. I mean, he even said that he thinks he's quite optimistic about dating prospects compared to some other people. But what seems to be the case, and what I'm reading, and this does resonate with my own experiences, is what is happening in dating, the dating marketplace today, is you've basically got 80% of the women dating or sleeping around with 20% of the guys. And then you've got a whole load of regular guys, a load of average guys. I'd say I'd probably be myself in that category, although I'm far from stereotypical, I'm far from a generic guy, but probably an average guy in many ways, who are basically getting nowhere. And it's made me rather angry. But it's an anger that I haven't really been able to deal with because there doesn't seem to be a solution. It's not angry at any individual, it's at the situation. Because when I grew up in school, I mean, I'm Asperger's, so I developed in a very unusual kind of way. I didn't really have it. Certainly didn't have any girlfriends as a teenager. I had no. I was way too shy to even consider that. But I did get some attention from girls at school, and I thought, if anything, the girls were a bit more flirty than the boys. The girls were chasing the boys about more than the boys chasing the girls. In my really probably very poor observations, but so I thought you go into as an adult when it comes to dating, you'd have roughly equal numbers of men and women, unless there's a war or something and half the men are dead. But ordinarily, 50% of men, 50-50 men and women. They both want to meet each other. They both have equal amounts of interest in each other. So therefore, so long as you present yourself in a decent kind of way, you should be able to attract a woman who's on a similar kind of attractiveness level as you. What I've found, in both my experience and to great disappointment, is that it doesn't seem to work that way. There seem to be some major disparities. It seems that the men want a relationship or want to date or have sex more so than the women. So there's a disparity of interest. And also because of the more recent globalization of the dating marketplace, such as the invention of social media and the invention of dating apps such as Tinder and Bumble, and combined with the way that men and women approach dating, and the types of preferences they have, the net result appears to be, and Troy Francis alludes to this sort of thing in his video, that the average women out there that you would think would be the regular guys would want to go out with, the regular guys would be able to go out with and be looking to date, realistically. The average Jane, as it were, those average women are able to access the top guys, the guys who are perceived to be the most attractive or eligible, not necessarily the best looking, but guys, combination of looks, muscles, money, and social status, game frame, all that kind of stuff. So what appears to be happening, particularly with the dating apps, is those average women are able to sleep around with the top guys. Although when it comes to commitment and a serious relationship, that's another matter. The top guys will sleep with the average girls, but they won't want to commit to them. But it doesn't seem to work the other way around. It doesn't seem to be that I'd have thought when all this stuff started, well, this is great. We've all got access. We all know where the single people are. We've got this massive hub and everyone should be able to find something. But it seems like with all this extra choice and more opportunities, there have been winners and the losers. And by and large, the winners have been the women and the very top tier of men, the men who are who either got money or great looks or whatever. I mean, it's all subjective, but you probably know what I mean by that. Socially savvy. Obviously, not money. Money in itself isn't going to do anything. Good looks in themselves aren't going to do anything. But the combination of that. So by and large, it's been the women who are the winners, and the men, the average men, especially more the below average men, the men with special needs and all that, have been losers as a result of all these dating apps. Now, I listen to Troy quite a lot. I find him interesting. I find him very engaging. I found some of the discussions he's had this week on his YouTube channels, and he's got two channels that I'm aware of. One is just called Troy Francis, and the other one is called The Dating Game, or it might be called The Dating Game with Troy Francis, where he does live streams and that. All really interesting stuff. Yeah, where was I? I find him very interesting and engaging, but what does frustrate me about him is he's basically a dating coach, and he is basically trying to encourage men and train men, and he sells coaching and all that kind of stuff in products to men to help them to level up. And that's the basic message to men, is that you've got to level up. Now, whenever I see an injustice, I want that injustice to be dealt with. I get rather annoyed when you're just basically trying to cope with the injustice. I think about when we had the COVID era, nearly 4 years ago now, and we had lockdown, and everyone was told to stay home and all that sort of thing. And obviously, that's going to be very distressing. That the disruption to normal everyday life and normal routine, very distressing to many types of people, including those with autism. But what you saw is all the autistic advocacy groups on their websites, they all basically went along with the narrative, and they just tried to write down strategies for all other autistics to cope with the situation, even though it was fundamentally unjust, it was tyrannical, and it was the idea of stay-at-home social isolation is going to be harmful to people in the long term. But rather than saying this is wrong, this is not on, we need to do something about it, go against the government and all that sort of thing, and deal with the problem from the first hand at its roots. All these autistic advocacy groups, as well as many other disability groups and trade unions and charities and all that, all they basically said, mental health groups and all that, all they basically said is, well, here are some strategies to cope, like have a routine and all that sort of thing in your home. Use the time to make it a hobby. All these strategies to cope with the situation, when fundamentally that situation doesn't have to be that way. It's been imposed upon us. And what these charities and organisations should have been doing is taking a stand and saying this is not on, this is not acceptable, this is harming our people, and encouraging their readership and their followers to go against the government and defy the government's mandates